Time now for French Connections, our weekly look at the intricacies of life here in France. Today, we're going to focus on an important event that rolls around once a year, the grape harvest. Flo, good to see you.
Good to see you, Delano.
Tell us more now. First, with over 3,000 different types of wine, France is one of the leading wine nations. So as you can imagine, the harvest is a big deal.
It's a huge deal, Delano, and let's kick things off with our word du jour, vendange. Now, as you'll be able to see, it's in the plural because that's when we're talking about the grape harvest season. We talk about les vendanges. Vendanger is to pick the grapes. Now, during the harvest, the precious grapes are not only picked, but they're sorted and pressed, and all this makes juice, of course, which is then put into tanks and then barrels to start the winemaking process. Now, there's really an art to deciding when the harvest begins, and there can be a big difference if you start a few days too early or a few days too late.
Now, the date of beginning the harvest obviously differs from region to region and year to year. There's been a trend in recent years. The vendanges are happening earlier and earlier.
They certainly are. Now, usually, the vendanges start in the hottest parts of France, like Corsica and Languedoc-Roussillon at the end of August, and then comes Beaujolais and the southern Vallée du Rhône at the beginning of September. And in general, by mid-September, you've got Bordeaux, Burgundy, the Loire Valley. They start their grape harvest then. And then finally, you have Alsace and Champagne. They usually follow suit at the end of September or the beginning of October. But as you mentioned, over the years, that calendar has been shifting, and it's gradually been moving forward. For instance, following a very hot summer, a very dry summer, well, some growers started the 2022 harvest in mid-August. So for some growers, that was almost a month before what happened the previous year, and that hadn't happened since the record heat wave in 2003. So this is a major event here in France. Many wine growers have actually had to adapt their techniques.
On a laissé beaucoup plus de feuillage sur les extrémités de la vigne pour faire de l'ombrage aux raisins et pour éviter que ça brûle les grappes courant l'été.
Now, Flo, scientists say that climate change is affecting not only the date of the harvest, but the quality of the grapes themselves and the amount of wine that's essentially produced.
Absolutely. Let's take the 2022 crop, for instance. It's expected to produce less juice than previous years because, many of the grapes just dried out on the vine, and then those that survived actually produced thicker skins to be able to protect themselves from the sun, essentially. But what's interesting is the 2022 year is expected to be an exceptional vintage, and that is because the hot and dry weather came at the perfect time during the ripening of the grapes, and this was the same in 2003, that other record heat wave. And if you're a fan of bubbles, and perhaps you are, Delano, you'll be happy to hear that that is especially true for the Champagne region.
Les grappes sont arrivées à bonne maturité, toujours pareil, gorgées de sucre, gorgées de soleil, on peut dire, cette année.
Une année comme cette année, c'est une bonne année du siècle, hein?
Flo, climate change doesn't necessarily mean better wines, does it?
It certainly doesn't, because if you look at what happened the previous year, so in 2021, it was the complete opposite. The summer was unusually wet, which meant that there was flooding, but also some of the vineyards had rot in them. Some of the vineyards got sick. And on top of that, there was a lot of frost and hail in April. So right when the buds were starting to break, some producers actually lost their work, their year's work in just a few minutes. So growers say that they're increasingly concerned about the extreme weather that comes with climate change, but especially the unpredictability.
Le climat était avec nous, quoi. On avait les pluies au mois de juillet, on avait un orage. Au mois d'août, on avait un orage. Et les raisins, bien sûr, pouvaient grossir avec du jus. Le plus de changement qu'il y a eu, ça a été le côté de la météo capricieuse. Je crois qu'aujourd'hui, 3 mois sans eau, ça sera courant. Il faut s'y adapter.
Now, if you've traveled around France during the harvest, you'll notice teams of people out in the fields hand-picking the precious fruit, but a lot of grape growers use machines.
To hand-pick your grapes or to use machines, that is the question, Delano. But it must be said that these grape-picking machines have been around for years, since the 70s, in fact. They're pretty silly looking, it must be said. It looks like they're perched up on these stilts, and they're designed to zip through the vineyards and essentially shake them so that the grapes fall. These days, 60% of wine producers use them because they have a lot of advantages.
Économiquement, aujourd'hui, on ferait plus de vin si on n'avait pas des machines. Une machine va remplacer une centaine de personnes. On a 2 machines qui tournent pendant 1 mois et demi. Voilà, pour nous, c'est une solution économique, mais aussi qualitative.
Now, Flo, the traditional hand-picking technique still has a better reputation in France, doesn't it?
It certainly does because it's, well, partially because it's associated with the Grand Cru wines, but also because it's really part of the national folklore. There's a human aspect to the vendange that's really important. It brings people together from all walks of life, all generations. And I must admit, I did it many moons ago after
I've
I
always wanted to
graduated.
do it.
It's really fun. It's a great experience. It's hard. It's physically one of the hardest things.
And you
I've
get free
ever
room
done.
and board, right?
You get, well, some people give you free room and board.
Free food, free wine, why not?
That's one of the advantages. It's hard though. It breaks your back. You can cut yourself. You have to get up super early, but you make great friends. And as you mentioned, you drink exceptional wines. And there's a big party at the end of the harvest. Just remember to drink responsibly.
Very good. Thank you very much for that, Flo. Flo Vilmino there. That's all the time we have for this edition of French Connections. In the meantime, you can tweet your questions to Flo. The address is @FloVilmino. And check out our website, france24.com. That's it for this.